guest on this podcast is Teddy Smith. Teddy is the Partnership Manager for Publishing Performance and the host of the Publishing Performance Show podcast. Publishing Performance is an Amazon Ad account manager powered by AI. The tool sets up your campaigns, chooses keywords, and optimizes everything over time to help you sell more books and make more profit. Teddy is also the founder of My Romance Reads, which is a newsletter of over 25,000 romance readers who love free and discounted books. Promote your romance books to his audience to get thousands of new readers. Welcome to the podcast, Teddy. Thank you so much for joining me, Teddy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you and how you came to be working with authors.
I work with authors in a couple of ways. So I'm a self-published author myself. I write on a couple of different pen names. I've got one children's book under my own name, which I did the drawings for as well. And I've self-published books in my brand. So I've got a meditation brand, which I don't really talk about too much as it's kind of separate to my author business. But the reason I started writing in the first place was I created books to be products for my meditation brand. So they'd be little books that are tips about how to do it or like instructional guides, things like that. And they sold really well. So I kind of got to know how the marketing process for Amazon works, and that was really what I was good at. And so since then, I've been doing a lot of consulting with authors who want to sell their books on Amazon. So I help a lot of people with their ads or with their marketing or with creating nice listings. And then I've also got another company called Publishing Performance. And that tool is an AI tool, but it's different to AI writing tools. It's much more of a tool to help people succeed on Amazon. So the way it works is it's basically an AI Amazon ad account manager. So it plugs into your KDP account, sets up your campaigns, chooses your keywords, optimizes the campaigns over time. And the aim of the tool is to reduce your ACoS and increase your sales. And so those are things I'm working on mostly at the moment, alongside writing some more books at the moment.
With Publishing Performance then, so for people listening who haven't come across it, so how does that work? How do they get started with that?
Yeah, so it's very straightforward. The reason we started in the first place was because getting ad account managers with real people can be quite expensive. And that's why we were just talking about it before the call, how expensive having contractors on your business can be. And, they can provide real value. But the way that the AI works is it plugs straight into your Amazon account. So once you're plugged in, it collects all your book data and you just select which books you want to advertise. And then it does some analysis in the back end. So it uses AI to think about the keywords that you should be ranking for. So it looks at your listing, your title, your categories, some of the content of the book, and decides which keywords it thinks you should be ranking for. And then it shows those keywords to you. You can make a decision as to whether those are the right keywords you want to start ranking for. And then you can just get it running. And you should be set up in 5 to 10 minutes. It really is quite straightforward. And that was really the reason why we did it, because a lot of people don't understand ads. It is quite complicated. And so we thought this would help people a lot.
I mean, I feel like that's the kind of magic bullet that a lot of authors are looking for, isn't it? Because Amazon ads always seems to flummox lots of people.
Yeah, and they're really important. I think there's lots of different types of ads, and people always ask me whether I should be doing Facebook ads or Amazon ads or BookBub ads or these different types of ads. And there isn't a right or wrong answer to any of those things. It really depends on what your aim is going to be. Now, if you're trying to build your author profile and gather people's email addresses, for example, then Amazon ads probably isn't the right solution for you at that time, because Amazon doesn't allow you to get customer data. They're quite protective of that, which I guess is understandable. But what's good about Amazon ads is they have a direct impact on what your ranking is for particular keywords. Each different keyword on Amazon has what's called an organic rank, and that's where you appear in the searches. So say your book, just in my example, say your book's about meditation. If a customer searches meditation, I want my book to appear in those searches because I know that the customers are looking for my book when they type in that keyword. So each book wants to be ranking for the right keywords for that book. And that's why Amazon ads are so good, because at first your book's got no real reputation. So Amazon doesn't really want to show your book to customers when it's got no sales history, especially if you've got a brand new Amazon account. Amazon doesn't know even if you're a good author or if you know anything about marketing or if your book is worth putting in front of customers. So it's very difficult to get your book shown. And the way you can get shown is by making more sales when people search for particular keywords. So say your book, meditation is not a great example because that's quite a broad keyword, that would be quite competitive. But say your book is meditation for busy mums, something like that. You could try and rank for keywords around meditation for mums, meditation for women, meditation for families, that sort of thing. And once you start making sales, when people search for that keyword, Amazon will then put your book higher up the ranking the next time someone searches for it, because they've now know that your book is going to be seen by more customers. And that's why ads are so important, because with Amazon ads, you can kind of jumpstart that process. So without having to wait for customers to find your books by searching for keywords, you can tell Amazon which keywords you should be ranking for, and then you'll start appearing near the top in the ad slots. And that's why Amazon ads are slightly different to Facebook ads. They're more about your reputation on Amazon, helping you make more sales and get that organic ranking as well.
I think that's a brilliant explanation, because I mean I've watched people talking about Amazon ads, and you can sort of feel like you understand it to a point, and then it all gets a bit more complicated. But that's a really nice kind of clear explanation. Do you have, like, are there a particular genre authors that you work with in publishing performance, or I mean obviously we've sort of mentioned the kind of non-fiction space there, haven't we, as an example? But are there any particular genres that you specialize with, or?
Not really. I mean, one of the things that we found very important when we were starting publishing performance was that we didn't want to tie people into long-term contracts, because some people try Amazon ads and they work and they carry on doing them. Some people try them and they don't work, and then they don't, they use it as an experiment. Or sometimes even people just advertise at particular times of the year. So that's why we were very keen on not having like a long contract and keeping it affordable, so people wouldn't be having to overspend and they can try it out when they want. But in terms of the genres, what we've found is that non-fiction, the search terms that people generally use are problems that they're trying to solve. So let's just give you a really good example. Atomic Habits is one of the most sold books over the last 5 years, I think, maybe even more than the Bible, I think. And so Atomic Habits, when people want to buy Atomic Habits, and for whatever reason, in the impossible scenario, they haven't heard of that book, the sort of things they'd be looking for would be how to be more productive. So a person who has a problem, that's what they're usually looking for with a non-fiction book. In my example before, it's you're a busy mum and you want to learn how to meditate. So then you'd be looking at meditation for mums. If non-fiction books, generally, a customer's got a problem and they're trying to solve it. With fiction books, what people look for is one of two things. So some people are just very broad and just look for categories like thrillers. Now, that's not a great keyword to be ranking for, particularly because, you're competing with John Grisham and, whoever else is in the thriller niche. But what people do actually search for is quite detailed tropes. And so, for example, you might search for cowboy romance with happy ending, and people actually sort of search for those sort of things. And we can see that data in loads of tools like Publisher Rocket. If you type those sort of keywords in, you can see people searching for them. So one of the tips I sometimes do, if you weren't using a tool like Publishing Performance, would be to use ChatGPT to try and find the good keywords that you could try and be ranking for. Now, the way I do that is I put some of my competition's books in there and say, these are the books that are my competition. I'd maybe give it a bit of a summary of what the book's about and what the ending is. You could even put the whole transcript of the book up if you've got the PDF of it, and give ChatGPT some bullet points about the sort of things that you want to be ranking for. So, for example, you could say, these are the tropes, and you'll know those. Or you could even ask ChatGPT to pull the tropes out. This is the subcategory. So like, cowboy romance or billionaire romance or something like that. And then ChatGPT can help you to pull those sort of long tail keywords out. And so obviously at Publishing Performance, we do that as well. So we'll pull those keywords out, set those up into campaigns and start running with them. But if you weren't using Publishing Performance, using AI can be a good way to help find those keywords as well. One thing I would say is, especially if you're a new author, unless you're Jilly Cooper or someone really famous, there's no point trying to rank for a keyword like romance, because you're competing straight away with Jilly Cooper and 50 Shades of Grey and all those like really famous books. So what you really want to be, is Jilly Cooper famous in America? Actually, I don't even know.
And that's a good question. Certainly famous in the UK, yeah. But you're competing with a huge genre, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you want to be finding those keywords that more accurately describe your book. That's what I would say. So getting those longer tail keywords can be really helpful.
Something that really kind of stands out from what you're saying, and this is something that I speak to authors about as well, is thinking about it from the point of view of the reader, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is the reader going to be looking for? That it feels like we have to really kind of get into that headspace, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just think about how you would search for a book yourself. I think is some quite helpful advice. I like historical thriller type books, like Robert Harris and people like that. That's my favorite type of fiction to read myself. So when I'm looking for new books, I might type something in like ancient Rome mystery or ancient Rome thriller or something. I'm quite specific with the things I'm looking for when I'm trying to find a book for myself because I'm quite like picky about the sorts of books I like. So think about the way you would look for books if you were trying to find a new author, and then reverse engineer that to think about what your books should be ranking for.
Yeah. I'd like to take a moment to let you know about my newly launched membership for authors, the Author Brand Community, or ABC. This is a supportive space where authors can come to get guidance, advice, get my eyes and ears on your author brand and your author business in a supportive group of like-minded authors who are all working on the same challenges at the same time. This group is where we will discuss everything to do with bringing your book to market, finding your readers, building your author brand, and giving your books the best chance of success. This is a membership group. You are free to cancel your membership at any time, and I'm looking forward to inviting you in and welcoming you into the community. For more information, go to the website www.buildyourauthorbrand.com. You'll find all of the information and details of what the membership entails, what you get as a member, and how to join. And of course, you can contact me, email me, or DM me through any of the social media platforms to find out more and have a chat. Yeah. Typically, what do most authors come to you, like, kind of what's the big challenge that most authors say to you when they're thinking about ads and how to approach this?
So a lot of authors obviously are struggling with sales. Now, one thing I would say is you can't necessarily out advertise a bad book. And when I say bad book, I don't mean like the actual content of the book is necessarily bad, but there's some things that you need to make sure you're optimizing before you start ads, really. Like, there's no point advertising a book with a really crappy cover with a description that doesn't tell you what's inside the book. I think it does help if you've got more reviews. I personally advertise my own books when they've got 0 reviews. Just I know that they're going to be more expensive. That reputation on Amazon is quite big. So if you haven't written your book or titled it yet, then don't give it a really whizzy name. Like a lot of people, want to write a book and they're quite artistic about it and they want to give the book a name that is, like an obscure word or something. But depending on who your reader is, if you just look at like romance books, it's the big example just because I've got another romance brand, but the books that are the most successful are, and the ones that make the most money, as soon as you see the cover and the title, it's really obvious what that book's going to be about. It'd be a man in a suit with like a 6-pack and it'll be called like Billionaires Boys Club or something like that. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I know what this book's about. And I know you might think of your book as being better than that or different to them, but I guess it depends whether you're trying to make a business out of this or if you're trying to just create a standalone book that is going to be read for years and years, like Charles Dickens or something like that. There's 2 ways to approach it, I think. And one of the main takeaways I saw from going to the summit in Seville that I was just talking about, it's called Global Publishing Summit. It's a really good conference. If you're in Europe, definitely think about going next year. I'm not affiliated with it. I just enjoyed going. But the authors there that were the ones that were making money were the ones that were keeping to the right tropes, and they were sticking to they knew their customer. Basically, they knew what their customer wanted. Their customer reads loads and loads of books, and they were creating products for their customers to read. There was an amazing talk by James Blatch, who runs the conference in London, and he was talking about front covers, and he was just showed some examples of front covers that were successful. And even people like James Patterson and Lee Child, their front covers are really clearly like what that trope is about. Like, Lee Child's covers are all a man walking away from an explosion or something like that. And it maybe you might think of yourself as special or different, but you've got to try and give your customers what they're looking for. And so my main advice to readers before they start advertising to writers, is to make sure you've got those fundamentals correct. You can't out advertise a bad book. So the fundamentals are: make sure your cover's good, your title as well, if you haven't titled your book already, and the description needs to sell what's inside the book. If you don't do that, then your ads aren't going to be effective and also could just end up costing lots of money.
Yes.
So fundamentals first, I'd say, as my main bit of advice.
That's brilliant. And, again, it comes back to thinking about who your reader is and getting really clear on that and
Yeah.
what is your reader looking for clarity for listeners. When we use the term bad books, like you said, we're not saying that your book is bad.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I think what you're saying is we need to make sure it's essentially the marketing
Yeah.
has
I
got to
think
be figured out, hasn't it?
I
Yeah.
think so. What's a better word? I think maybe you need to make sure your book is optimized for the
Right.
best possible chance of success.
Or saleable, as saleable as it can
Yeah.
be. Yeah.
When I've done talks before, there's a funny example I use, and it's you know, The Hobbit, that famous
Mhm.
cover
Mhm.
originally that they had with the green and blue. You know, it gives you
Yeah.
a real idea of this sort of journey that they're going to go on.
Yes.
There's another copy I found in a charity shop, and it was called Bilbo the Hobbit. It was like a French version, but the Hobbit on the front was like a little fat cartoony type thing with a tiny little dagger, and the trolls looked like these little toads that were just hanging around in the background. And I was like, no one's ever going to buy that book. Everyone's going to buy the Hobbit with this amazing like adventure cover. Like,
Landscape. I remember my copy of The Hobbit as a child was the, I think, the volcano with the dragon coming out.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
the book has got to tell you what it is essentially
Yeah.
from the cover and the
Yeah.
title.
And I think about why you're writing in the first place. Like, there's kind of two different types of authors, really. You've got people who are writing standalone books that take ages to write, and you know, they really are sort of pieces in themselves. And there's other people who are writing to make a living and to turn this into more of a book business. Now, if you're in the second part, you've really got to be writing to, you've got to be thinking about your books as products, and so that they are marketed in the right way. They are, your customers are going to want them. You've got to really understand what your customer wants. So those parts are really important. And a lot of people who are writers, they want to see their work as art. And it, you know, it is, you've written this amazing stuff, but until you're famous or you've got that reputation, I think you've really got to be selling your books to your customers, and understanding your customer is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Every conversation that I have with, with marketers and people in the publishing space, it boils down to these, these are such huge factors, aren't they?
Yeah.
Knowing the customer, the reader, knowing who they are, who are you marketing to? And because Amazon ads, as clever as it is and as clever as the AI tools are, they can't, you have to input that information, don't you? You
Yeah.
have to tell it,
Yeah.
this is the reader that I'm targeting.
I think even with the work you do, like with PR, if someone came to you with a book which had a bad cover, I think probably the first thing you'd suggest them would be to think about that cover.
Absolutely.
And before I mean, there's no point giving a book with a crappy cover to trying to get it in the Times like bestsellers list, because then they don't want to read it because it's not ready for them. The fundamentals need to be there before you really are going after everything else.
Yes. What are you passionate about with working with the author community then?
I'm quite a data nerd. I really like I like spreadsheets and stuff like that. I'm not as artistic as a lot of your listeners will be, but I'm much more interested in looking at the data and like the business of self-publishing. I think it's fascinating. I think it's really interesting. I love entrepreneurship, and I think it's an amazing way to make money. You know, there's a lot of self-published authors out there who are able to manage their own time, doing their own thing, doing something they love, which is writing, learning more about entrepreneurship, like learning about things like advertising, marketing, PR, that you wouldn't do if you just had a normal job. And I just love that aspect of just being able to live where you want. I find that super, super inspiring. So that's the main thing I like about working with authors and working in this industry. I really like the people as well. The people are really cool and interesting to hang out with, and they're doing
great
something
community, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And a very global one, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really good.
So, Teddy, you mentioned there earlier that you also have a romance brand. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So it's just going under renovation at the moment, but it should be, by the time this goes out, I imagine it'll be live. It's called My Romance Reads. It's a newsletter for romance authors to promote their book when they're on free or on discount. We've got about 25,000 subscribers to that list. So, and the open rate's about 35%. So we get a lot of downloads from books when they go out. The reason that newsletter exists is when people launch, especially when they launch new books, it's really good to get your book onto either a free or to a discounted promo, because when you do that, you get like literally you can get thousands of downloads in one day. Now, the benefit of this, even if that sale in itself doesn't make any money, is that you've got 1,000 new readers. Now, if 10% of those 1,000 readers convert into like long-term readers, that's 100 new people that love your authorship. They want to read your other books. They want to see what your new stuff's coming out. They might join your newsletter. So having that book on promotion and getting out to as many potential new readers as possible is a really good tactic to get your book out there. The reason I took on this business in the first place is because this tactic is something I've used with my non-fiction books, and it's worked really well for growing my brand. I think it's been one of the biggest source of new customers to my brand and also to people joining my newsletter for that meditation brand I was talking about. And so when I saw that this business come up and I could see how well it could be improved, I was like, this is exactly the one for me. And I love romance books. I don't particularly read romance books much myself, but my mum and my wife love them. So I've got a sounding board to go against. But it's really funny because yesterday I was talking to someone from a conference. It's called Crush. And it's all about erotic books. And they were just telling me about all the different talks they had going on. And so I'm talking on a panel with a load of BDSM experts. So that's my new life at the moment. So yeah, so my romance reads, it's a great place for both readers and for authors to promote their books. We've had some really big names come through the list as well recently. So it's we're growing it a lot at the moment. So if you are a romance author and you want to talk about getting your book promoted for free, then yeah, get in touch. I'll put a link to it in the show notes so you can grab that.
That sounds amazing. Really very interesting. We will definitely highlight that in the show notes.
Is free or like discounted books, is that something you talk about when you're doing PR as well?
Yeah, I'm always advising people to run promotions. Promotions is a huge part of building the author brand and getting your books out there. But obviously, there are so many different tools, aren't there, now to kind of give free books. But again, I think it comes down to knowing what you're doing, who you're targeting, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's some really good ones out there. Written word media is like the big one. So I'm kind of promoting my competitor at this, but he's got one called Free Booksy, and that one is a really good list for promoting any book for free. I did it once. I got the 3,000 downloads of my free book in one day, which was unbelievable. So written word media is a great one to check out. That's not genre specific, that's just books. So I think the conversion rate's probably not quite as good as doing a romance specific one like my romance reads, but there's no point putting your history fiction book in my list because everyone on my list is looking for sexy books.
Thank you for sharing all of this. You've shared some really interesting and useful things. So what's next for you and your business or businesses? You're a true entrepreneur with many different strands to what you're doing. What are you kind of looking forward to?
So Mo Romance Reads is my main focus at the moment. I'm working on that with my wife, and she's just coming off maternity leave at the moment. So I'm hoping that that's going to be like our business that we run together over the next few months. So I'm really excited about that because I think it's got a lot of potential. I really like working with romance authors. I think they're all really fun, and they've all, very lighthearted, very like easy to get on with. I think some other authors are quite serious, whereas romance authors are all like, yeah, no, we're just talking about willies and boobies today. So it's quite a fun audience.
I do need to put a warning on this.
Yeah, so working on that quite a lot, and I'm gonna try my hand at writing a young adult novel. I think I've had this idea in my head for a long time about something quite similar to Famous Five. Like it's a British series by Enid Blyton, and it was my favorite books when I was growing up. They're quite old fashioned. They're written in the 50s, so they're quite like outdated. But I actually, when I was younger, I used to pretend I was like Julian, who's one of the characters, and my brother was Dick, and we had like, it was a really, I have a lot of memories about Famous Five. But I think it could be something around that sort of young people holiday idea, and I'm working on outlining that sort of book at the moment, so that should be fun. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go, but the reason I'm doing that partly is because I've always wanted to do it. But I was chatting to Joanna Penn, and she was like, you got to write a book, and I was like, yep, okay, I'll get on that now. So that
yeah good, excellent advice. Yeah, we all need to get on and write our books.
Yeah.
So if people want to connect with you, or they want to hear more about either publishing performance or romance reads, what's the best way for people to come and seek you out?
Yeah, so my website is teddyagsmith.com. My social medias are teddyagsmith everywhere, I think. And publishing performance is publishingperformance.com. And my romance reads is myromancereads.com. I've got a newsletter on all three of those. So if you wanted to sign up for any of that, then you can hear more of what's going on.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing loads of great tips and insights there. But thank you, Teddy.
That's all right. Thank you very much for having me.